G'day everybody, how are you going today? I have just finished printing. Now I've got some mounting to do. Mounting some images, which is always very exciting. And this is what I've printed. They're curled because we're getting towards the end of the roll. And I've just got to mount them up. Then we're going to head back to my old office because this is for an order and I've got to deliver it to somebody. Well, they're coming to pick it up and I've got 1 hour. So what this film is actually about, and thank you so much for joining me today, I wanted to make a series about using F-mount lenses with the Z body. So using the F to Z or FTZ or F2Z, FTZ adapter. This used to be full. Now it's basically empty, except for my desk. And one of the big advantages, if the lens works as well as it does if it's on an F native body, is that you now have in-body stabilization. You now have stabilization. One of my all-time favorite lenses, I do have a lot, but one lens I like to, get a bit arty with and really get some separation with foreground and background is, of course, you'd be able to work it out, the 85mm 1.4. What a great lens. And now, of course, up until recently, nobody had one of those stabilized, and Canon's come out with an almighty 85mm that has stabilization in it. So good on them for doing that. It's an enormous thing. First we have to cut these up. I printed, these are basically good old-fashioned 8x10 prints, printed on a 310 GSM luster archival paper with the Epson 2000. Epson rate these stored in appropriate archival conditions at, I think it's 150 years for the colour ones and 250 years for the black and white ones. None of my primes have stabilisation. I've got the 24, the 50 and the 85 1.4s. I have all of those, none of them are stabilised. My tilt shift lenses are not stabilised. So having stabilisation is actually a really useful thing for these lenses. And what that means is they're not even going to start to change colour for that amount of time. Like I said, if printed archivally, which means on the right stock, which this is, and then stored in the right conditions. And it was what I have observed sometimes is that when you're, say, shooting, because you know what they say, if you're shooting at 85mm, you should be at least, say, around 1/85th of a second. Your shutter speed should match your focal length at an absolute minimum. Now, really that rule of thumb should probably be double it, because I've noticed it's a bit risky sometimes. You shoot at 85, there's a very short depth of field, there's quite a long lens. We're now shooting on a 45 megapixel sensor, and a percentage of the shots can actually be soft. I used to hand print in the darkroom, and back in those days, in the late 80s and 90s, all of the 90s, I used resin coated papers, which were easier to work with when they got wet, but really they didn't last very long. The life was 30 to 40 years, and to have this improvement is absolutely fantastic. It means the print that you are providing a customer will outlive them, and it will probably outlive their children, and it'll probably outlive their children's children. And now I'm really excited about being able to use all of that combo and do it with the Z with stabilization. So that's what I've been experimenting with, and that's what this episode's about. So what's my experience been? Well, I've used it just a couple of times now, and having reviewed 1,000 images, I did a whole shoot with it last week. I'm going to do another shoot tomorrow. Having reviewed 1,000 images, it's working. It's absolutely working. One thing I have noticed often when you're doing portraiture, you're focusing on people and their eyes, and the Z has a box which is sort of a small box, and then it has a super small or super fine tiny box. Now you want to choose that to make sure that you are focusing on the eye, because if you use that slightly larger box, then it can get a larger area around it, and it might focus on the nose or other parts, and because that depth of field is so short, the eye is actually slightly out of focus. So that's my one little piece of learning. I have heard that the IAF is coming out very soon for the Z cameras. Presumably it will mitigate this problem completely, but until then I would thoroughly advise that you use the very small box. Make sure you get it right over the eyeball, and then that will be your focus point because of that ultra short depth of field. Even a movement to here or to a nose, you know, that's an inch, 2.5 mils, and that is enough to throw it out of focus. Otherwise, it's working great. You get the level of focusing that you expect from the Z. In low light, I think it's somewhere around a D810. In good light, it's fine, normal, what I expect from the D850. Focusing the 85mm, so not acquiring focus, but shifting the focus within the lens, I think is probably marginally slower on the Z. Not a lot, like maybe instead of it being half a second, it's a second or something like that. But finding focus in good light, no problem. And as I said, in lower light, it's probably more like the D810 was. The D850 is a monster up there with the D500 and the D5. And, you know, that's the way it is. So I think the 85mm and the Z7 and of course the Z6, which we know focuses a little bit faster, I think they work really well together. I think it's a great solution. People with lots of f-mount lenses, and I'm going to go through all the ones that I have, so I'm going to do a series of the F and the Z. How does it work? I think anyone with F lenses is going to be really happy. They're going to be able to use those lenses for the rest of their normal life, and that's going to be great. Like, you know, a lens might last somewhere between 10 and 20 years. You're going to be able to use it. You know, if you've had a lens for 10 and you want another 10 years out of it, that's going to be totally achievable. It's going to be totally achievable with this adapter, and the results are going to be exactly what you want. Now, of course, if you're a pro and, you know, in the course of half a day shooting or quarter of a day shooting, you make enough to buy new lenses, then you will if you want to go Z, you will update your Zs sooner. But what I'm saying is, if some of them, especially the special like tilt shift, you know, it could take forever to get Z lenses, Z mount lenses that are tilt shifts, forever. And they because they're manual and everything, they are a great example of a lens that really will go on forever and will work fine in this space. And there are other examples of those sorts of specialty lenses. But the important ones, the 24-70 2.8, now out. I hear it's going very well. The 70-200 2.8 is slated to be out this year, so it's presumably coming out any second. And we've already got the, what is it? It's the 14-30. I know it's an f4, but you know, when you're wide angle, you really can't see the difference between an f4 and f2.8. And because you have in-body stabilization, the extra stop of light is sort of negligible. So we've already got, from my perspective, the Holy Trinity is with us, or just about with us. The basics of a photographer is here, and yeah, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. So for those who want to transition, you could spend probably in this country something along the lines of 7,000 or 8,000, and in America it'd be something like 5,000 to 6,000 to get your holy trinity of lenses, and that covers, you know, 70-80% of everything that you do, and then the primes come along, which is what we've all done over time with our F mounts and whatever other cameras that we've had. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the 85mm on the F to Z. I would love to know what F lenses you have, what F lenses you think would last you for another 10 years, and tell me whether you'd be happy using them on the Z mount with the FTZ. Tell me what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again so much for watching. It's been lovely to see you as I've been driving along here today. Please like. Please subscribe, please share, you know, it makes us smarter. And I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Okay, bye for now.